At Christmas dinner, right as I set the turkey on the table, my mother didn't even look up when she said it. Emily, you'll need to move out. Soon. The lights on the tree flickered against her blank face, while my aunt froze, and my little sister stared into her plate, like it might save her. No yelling, no build-up, just a quiet execution. And the worst part? She'd already told people I'd lost control that night, long before I ever stood up. But what they didn't know was this her lie was only the first crack. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from. I read every comment, and it still amazes me how many of us grew up carrying weight that was never ours. If you've ever been blamed for things you didn't do or betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect you, hit like and subscribe. Because to understand why my mother pushed me out, you need to see where it all began. A year before that Christmas, my life looked completely different. I was 26, living in a cramped downtown apartment with brick walls that shed dust whenever the buses rumbled past. It wasn't perfect. The floors creaked, the water heater hissed, and the window froze from the inside, every winter morning. But it was mine. I woke up early, padded across the cold floor, brewed cheap coffee in a chipped blue mug, and watched sunlight spill like gold across my small desk with two mismatched monitors. Work isn't glamorous, but it gave me something I'd never had growing up: stability. I handled outages, midnight server crashes, frantic calls, yet nothing shook me. My manager joked that I was unflappable, but calm wasn't a personality trait. It was survival training from childhood. I paid every bill with the money I earned. My time was mine, my space was mine. For the first time in my life, I wasn't folding myself small to keep the peace. Then my phone rang. My mother rarely called without a reason. Seeing Mom on my screen made my stomach tighten instantly. When I answered, I heard shaky breathing, the kind that comes right before a breakdown. "Emily, honey, I don't know what to do." Her voice trembled through the speaker. She told me the house was weeks from foreclosure. Mortgage late, utilities past due, savings gone. She said she was drowning, ashamed, alone. She told me she needed me, that she didn't know who else to call. As she cried, I looked around my little apartment, still messy from a 2 a.m. outage shift, and felt that fragile sense of freedom collapse under guilt. The Carter house wasn't just drywall and bills, it held the last pieces of my father. He'd been gone 7 years, but his jacket still hung in the hall closet, smelling faintly of motor oil and cedar. His handwriting was still etched into the kitchen doorway where he measured our heights. The garage, now locked, still held his tools and the memory of him teaching me how to fix my bike. Losing that place felt like losing him again. So I told her I'll come, even though I'd just earned a raise, even though I'd finally built a life outside of her shadow, even though something in my chest whispered that this was the beginning of something I couldn't yet see. 2 days later, I broke my lease, packed my life into cardboard boxes. When I carried the last one down the narrow stairs, I caught my reflection in the dusty hallway mirror. Hair tied back, face tired, but determined. I told myself it was temporary. 3 months, maybe 4. When I pulled into the driveway, Patricia rushed out like a grieving widow seeing a ship return. She hugged me too tightly, calling me her lifeline. Lily was home from college, standing on the porch with a small smile that looked equal parts grateful and relieved. Even Aunt Marlene came by with a peach cobbler, praising me for being such a good daughter. And for a moment I believed it. Believed we were a family again. Believed I was wanted. But I didn't know then what I know now: gratitude is the first thing to vanish when someone realizes they can use you. The first few weeks back at the house felt almost gentle, like stepping into an old photograph that hadn't faded yet. Patricia made hot cocoa in Dad's old mugs. Lily and I watched trashy reality TV on the sagging couch. I paid the mortgage, then the utilities, then groceries, telling myself it was temporary. Patricia thanked me softly each time, touching my arm like she was blessing me. But small things began to shift, tiny, almost forgettable moments that only made sense later. It started with gratitude, fading into habit. The first time I reminded her about applying for jobs, Patricia sighed dramatically, as if the suggestion itself was exhausting. A few days later, when I asked again, she didn't sigh, she snapped. "Emily, you don't understand how hard things are for someone my age." Her voice wasn't angry. It was edged with accusation, like I'd personally placed every obstacle in her path. Then came the savings question. "Mom, last month you said the emergency fund was gone. What happened?" Her eyes flickered just for a second. Then she rubbed her temple and whispered, "Can we not talk about money right now?" And with that, the conversation evaporated. Patricia had always been skilled at redirecting. She could turn a question into guilt in under 10 seconds. But back then, I still thought protecting her feelings was my duty. The house felt different too, smaller, heavier. Some nights I lay awake listening to the heater rattle, staring at the ceiling of my childhood room, still covered in floral wallpaper I hated. The room hadn't changed in 15 years, and somehow neither had the role I played in this house. One evening, when I came home late from a server outage shift, I found Patricia sitting at the kitchen table with her phone. She didn't hear me come in. Her voice was low, almost amused. "No, she's paying for everything." "Yes, everything. Honestly, it's been a blessing." A pause, a faint laugh. "She thinks she's saving the house." A cold, creeping feeling spread down my spine. Not anger, something closer to recognition. I stepped back quietly before she saw me. I wanted to believe she was venting, exaggerating, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like she wasn't stressed at all, just relieved someone else was carrying the weight. A week later, Lily knocked on my door late at night. She looked nervous, like she shouldn't be there. Emily, I think Mom is telling people you're struggling with money. I frowned. I'm covering everything. Why would she say that? Lily hesitated. She said she doesn't want the family to think she's a burden. There it was, the first real truth peeking through the cracks. Patricia didn't want help. She wanted a shield, a buffer, someone to absorb both the bills and the blame. Still, I convinced myself I was imagining things. It was almost Christmas. Families fought. Stress made people act strange. I kept building excuses for her, layering them like bandages over a wound I refused to admit was deepening. I kept telling myself things were fine, that this was just a rough season, that the mother I used to know would show up again. But every day, something in the house pressed a little harder on my chest. A glance, a sigh, a small silence that felt loaded. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. But at that time, I still believed I was helping her climb back to her feet. I didn't realize she'd already decided I was never supposed to stand on mine again. The shift from temporary help to permanent obligation didn't arrive with a dramatic scene. It came quietly, one small demand at a time. The first hit was the gas bill. Patricia knocked on my door one morning holding the envelope like it personally insulted her. Emily, I mixed up the due dates. Can you cover it this month? I didn't hesitate. I'd already been covering bigger bills anyway. I added it to the list on my phone. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, repairs, because somehow, writing it down made it feel manageable. 2 days later, she did it again. Then again. After that, she stopped asking altogether and simply left the bills on my desk. The second hit came over breakfast. Patricia stood in the kitchen holding an electric bill like it was evidence in a trial. $270. Ridiculous. Her tone wasn't angry, just sharp. Emily, you need to stop overusing things. I blinked. Mom, that's the heater you run all night. And the space heaters. She cut me off with a look that shut the whole room down. You're the tech girl. Your gadgets use everything. It wasn't logic she wanted. It was someone to blame. That evening, Lily came into my room with her arms crossed like she was holding herself together. Emily, Mom told Aunt Marlene you're irresponsible with money. I stared at her. I'm covering every bill in this house. I know, Lily whispered. She just doesn't want people to think she depends on you. That sentence stuck with me longer than it should have. Patricia didn't want help. She wanted the appearance of independence, while I quietly carried her entire life. The third hit landed on a Tuesday soaked in rain. I came home dripping shoes, squishing jeans, clinging to my legs. Patricia was on the phone twirling the cord, laughing softly. No, she pays for everything now. Yes, everything. Honestly, it's a blessing. A pause, a small amused snort. She thinks she's saving the house. My breath caught, not because of what she said, but how easily she said it like she had rehearsed the line. I stepped back before she noticed me. My clothes were cold, but something inside me felt colder. The fourth hit arrived through a different voice entirely, a woman from the bank. Hi, is this Emily Carter? We're calling to confirm activity on your secondary credit line. A knot tightened in my throat. I don't have a secondary card. It's listed under Patricia Carter as primary. My fingers went numb. My voice stumbled over itself. When the call ended, the silence in the room was sharp enough to cut skin. I should have confronted Patricia right then. But confronting her without proof was like playing chess blindfolded against someone who rearranged the board every time you blinked. So I waited. The fifth hit came from the house itself. The heater died one freezing morning. The air inside felt thin, as if the walls were inhaling all the warmth for themselves. The repair tech arrived, knelt beside the furnace and frowned deeply. This hasn't been serviced in years. I looked at Patricia. She widened her eyes like an actress missing her cue. Oh, Emily. I don't know how you'll manage it. Not we. You. She didn't even pretend. When the tech left, Patricia pressed her hand dramatically to her temple. Can you keep your laptop off tonight? The fan keeps me up. I stared at her. Mom, my job? Oh, Emily, she sighed as if I was the burden. Please, I'm too stressed for this. Something deep inside me tightened. A door I didn't know existed creaked shut, but the worst part, I still tried. Tried to help, tried to be patient, tried to believe we could get back to that warm version of the house I thought existed weeks ago. I didn't realize that warmth was nothing more than bait, and the hook was already in my mouth. The sixth hit arrived disguised as something harmless, a grocery receipt. I was reheating leftovers when Patricia walked in, holding it between two fingers like it was contaminated. Emily, she said, did you buy almond milk? I nodded. You asked for it. I asked for one. You bought 3. Her tone sharpened. Do you think money grows on trees? I stared at her. They were on sale. It saved money. Patricia hated logic. Logic was resistance. Resistance was disrespect. Next time, she said coolly, check with me before you make decisions. It's still my house. There it was again, her favorite weapon. A reminder that no matter how much I paid, I didn't belong. The seventh hit came 2 days later when the roof started leaking. A slow drip tapped into a cereal bowl I placed underneath it, each drop like a countdown. The roofer's estimate made my stomach twist. When I handed Patricia the paper, she didn't read it. She acted wounded by the very existence of the problem. Emily, I'm already overwhelmed. How could you dump this on me right now? Dump? Like I'd created the hole myself. Mom, this is your house, I said quietly. You need to. She slapped the estimate onto the table. You'll handle it. You always do. Something hot pressed behind my ribs. I can't keep her eyes snapped to mine. Cold. Final. Don't start. She walked away, leaving me with the leak, with the responsibility, with the shame that wasn't mine to carry. The eighth hit arrived on a weekend when Lily came home. She kept hovering near me, shifting from foot to foot, glancing down the hallway to see if Patricia was listening. Late that night, she cracked my door open. Emily, she whispered, Mom told Aunt Marlene you screamed at her yesterday. She said you threw the roofer's estimate at her. My mouth opened. No words came. I didn't raise my voice. I know, Lily said, swallowing hard. I just thought you should know. Her eyes shimmered apology and fear mixed together. I touched her hand. Thank you for telling me. She slipped out silent, as a shadow. The ninth hit came when the house felt too suffocating to stay inside. I grabbed my jacket late one night, planning to take a walk. As I passed the living room, Patricia's voice drifted toward me, tight, urgent. No, she won't leave, not yet. A pause. Well, she pays for everything. Yes, everything. It's convenient. Another pause. Softer. She thinks she's saving us. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Convenient. That's all I was. I stepped back, but my foot tapped the baseboard. Patricia turned, eyes narrowing. How long have you been standing there? Not long, I said, keeping my voice steady. If you heard something she said, you misunderstood. And she hung up without saying goodbye, proof she didn't want the person on the other end to know I'd heard her. I didn't sleep that night. The house creaked, the wind pushed against the siding. The leaking roof tapped in steady, maddening rhythm. For the first time, I felt the truth press against me with full weight. This wasn't a rough patch. This wasn't stress. Patricia wasn't overwhelmed. She was settled, comfortable. Maintained by me the way someone might rely on a built-in appliance. And the more I noticed, the more she pushed. Her sighs turned theatrical, her complaints sharper, her stories about me more twisted. By the week before Christmas, every interaction felt like walking barefoot on broken glass. I kept trying to be patient, to avoid conflict, to hold the family together. But the wire between us had stretched so thin, every breath made it tremble. And when Christmas Eve arrived, when I carried that turkey to the table with shaking hands, I didn't realize I was already standing on the fault line. The snap wasn't a surprise. It was the only outcome left. Christmas Eve looked beautiful in the way staged photos do, warm lights, polished silverware, cinnamon hanging in the air. But underneath it all, the house felt brittle, like one wrong breath would crack it open. Snow drifted quietly outside, muting the world beyond the windows. Inside, everything felt too loud, the scrape of utensils, the hum of the heater I'd paid to repair, the faint clink as Lily set her glass down with nervous fingers. I placed the turkey golden steaming at the center of the table. Hours of cooking. My hands were still warm from the oven, but the rest of me felt cold. Aunt Marlene tried to start small talk, but her voice died in the stillness. Lily stared at her plate as if looking up might make something shatter. Patricia sat at the head of the table, perfectly composed, her expression carved from something smooth and impenetrable. She didn't smile, didn't frown, just watched the turkey like she was waiting for her cue. We filled our plates, forks moved, silence dragged. And then Patricia set her knife down with a soft, decisive click. Emily, she said, her eyes still lowered, you'll need to move out. Soon. Just that. No build-up, no explanation, no humanity. Aunt Marlene's hand froze mid-air. Lily's breath hitched, a sharp, tiny gasp she tried to hide. My pulse didn't spike, it stalled, flattening into something eerily calm. I swallowed. I'm sorry. What? Patricia carved a small piece of turkey, lifting it onto her plate with careful precision. This arrangement isn't working anymore. Arrangement. Like I was a business deal past expiration. I forced the words out evenly. Mom, I've paid every... She finally raised her eyes, and the boredom in them was more painful than anger could ever be. You've served your purpose, she said. It's time for you to focus on your own life. There was no accusation, no guilt, just dismissal. Like she'd decided long ago and was simply informing me of the schedule. Lily whispered, Mom. Now on Christmas. Patricia didn't look at her. It's my house, Lily. And this is what's best. Best. For her. Never for anyone else. My throat tightened. I don't understand. I've done everything you don't need to understand, Patricia said, cutting me off. You just need to pack. My vision blurred for a second, not from tears, but from the realization that she wasn't acting on impulse. This was rehearsed, planned, possibly orchestrated with someone she'd been whispering to late at night. I looked around the table. Aunt Marlene stared at her lap. Lily looked like she was swallowing a scream. And I felt something inside me fall silent in a way I'd never felt before. I didn't throw anything. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I simply pushed my chair back. The legs scraped softly on the floor, a gentle final. I stood smoothing my hands against my jeans as if dusting off the last bit of hope I'd carried into that room. Up the stairs, down the hall, into my old room with its childish wallpaper and stale memories. I opened my suitcase. And as I folded my clothes with mechanical calm, the truth crystallized. Patricia didn't break me tonight. She revealed exactly who she'd always been. And somewhere beneath the hurt, a cold, steady resolve began to take shape. The motel room I checked into that night was barely bigger than a storage closet, and the carpet smelled like damp cardboard. But the silence, raw, untouched, felt like the first real breath I'd taken in months. No footsteps pacing outside my door. No exaggerated sighs. No accusations wrapped in honeyed tones. Just quiet. Just me. I waited for someone to notice I was gone. One message, one missed call. Anything. Nothing came. By the third day, the quiet stopped feeling peaceful and turned into clarity. My absence didn't create concern. It created convenience. The first call finally came not from Patricia, but from Aunt Marlene. Emily, she began sharply, your mother is devastated. She said you screamed on Christmas, threw things, stormed out like a child. I closed my eyes. The lie wasn't surprising. What surprised me was how easily people believed her. But instead of defending myself, I let her talk. Let her build her own story. Because I'd learned something important. Private arguments only fed Patricia's version of reality. So that night, with the motel's weak lamp flickering overhead, I opened my laptop and did the thing she never expected. I told the truth. Not with anger, not with insults, just facts. A clean timeline of every bill I'd paid. Receipts, screenshots, mortgage statements, repair costs, what actually happened at Christmas dinner. And I ended with one sentence I left quietly, because she told me to leave. Then I shut my phone off and slept. When I powered it back on the next morning, it nearly lit up the whole room. Messages, missed calls, comments. The family group chat exploded. A cousin wrote, we had no idea. We're so sorry. Another relative said, why didn't your mother tell us this? But the message that made my stomach drop came from an unknown number. A screenshot. A conversation between Patricia and someone saved as Jay. She thinks she saved the house, Patricia wrote. But she doesn't know anything. She can't know. Can't know what? As I stared at the message, my phone buzzed again. Lily. Emily. We need to talk. I found something. Mom hasn't told you everything. Cold swept through me. Whatever Patricia feared was bigger than a lie. Bigger than a bill. Bigger than the eviction. And now the truth. Her truth was finally cracking open. I didn't know what Lily had found, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever Patricia had been hiding was big enough to terrify her, big enough to push me out before I uncovered it. She thought distance would keep the truth buried. She was wrong. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to keep the peace. I was following the trail. And it was leading straight to that locked garage my father once called his sanctuary. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit subscribe. This story isn't over.